the University of Arizona Bio5 Institute, we bring together hundreds of multifaceted experts that include world-class bioscientists, engineers, physicians, and computational researchers. This team science approach is designed to ignite creative solutions to the many complex biological challenges facing our families and communities, and has resulted in disease prevention strategies, promising new therapies, innovative diagnostics and devices, and improved food sustainability.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Science Talks, a conversation hosted by the University of Arizona's Bio5 Institute. My name is Lisa Romero. By leveraging existing technology in an innovative way to improve the patient experience, our guest today speaks directly to the University of Arizona's core values of adaptation and compassion. Dr. D.K. Kang, a biomedical engineer and optical sciences professor at the University of Arizona, was developing a smartphone confocal microscope to diagnose cancer in rural settings when a researcher on the other side of the world reached out to see if his technology could be used to diagnose corneal ulcers. Dr. Kang has worked for many prestigious research centers and with many global collaborators over the course of his career, and we're so happy to have his unique approach to scientific innovation here at Bio5. Well, I'm really excited to be here today with Dr. Kang, and I really admired your work. I think it is imaginative, inventive, innovative, and I want to get to that in a second, and a lot of other things. I want you to tell us all the projects that you're working on, but wanted to take, I think, first a step back in time. And did you grow up in Korea? I know you went to school in Korea, right?
Right. So I grew up in Korea and I went to college, master's degree, PhD degree. So I spent first 20 or so years in Korea, and then I came to the United States in 2007 to the Mass General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. So that's my American dream, started.
So did you always have that dream, and did you have sort of this science engineering background or dream? I mean, what did that look like as a young person?
Right, sure. So my father was an electrical engineer. He worked for LG Electronics for 25 years and 30 years. So his weekend activity was to fix one of the electric appliances in the neighbor. So our home became like this place where neighbors just bring in whatever they have problems with, and then my father just opens it up and solder things together and so on. So I guess I got so used to seeing that, and I felt like it's very natural for me to become an engineer.
Interesting. I mean, it's been fun with these podcasts talking to our different researchers, because some really did know at a young age and others did not, and
Right.
in all these different journeys that you all have had. It's really fun to hear about that. So what was your, growing up and having that around you, what was your favorite science project you ever did as a young person before you got into college?
I mean, that's a good question. So I think after middle school, everything was so structured, and there was not much room in terms of doing something creative. I mean, starting something from your own initiation. But I think when I was an elementary school student, I put together this helicopter out of pieces and bits, and then try to make it fly. It never flew, but it was really fun project. I really wasn't proud of myself, because I mean there was no instruction how to build it. I kind of came up with general thought and put things together. So that was really a lot of fun.
That definitely is a young engineer mindset for sure, right? How to put things together. So let's talk about that a little bit, putting things together. So you have this really tremendous, education profile, and have all this training in interesting areas, but you have merged sort of two areas and two sort of emerging areas, if you will, ever emerging areas of optical sciences and biomedical engineering. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, how the emergence of those two fields sort of have coincided with your ability to do the work that you do, because I don't think a lot of people understand, how those two fields can work together and really produce results.
Right, sure. I guess, I can give a little bit of background how I ended up here. So I did mechanical engineering for PhD back in Korea. And what I did for my PhD was to develop optical microscopy equipment for inspecting, semiconductors and LCD panels and things like that for, companies like Samsung or, LG. But then when I got my first job in the US as a postdoc fellow at the Harvard Medical School and Mass General Hospital, that's when I transitioned from, applying optics for industrial applications to, biomedical applications. So that's when the transition happened, for me personally. But like this in the field of biomedical optics has been around for decades, and it's been very exciting and somewhat successful, discipline, I would say. So, so to me, like, it's always fascinating to be able to take a look at human tissue and human cells with optics without having to yank it out. So, so that always fascinated me. Combining those two, disciplines to get optical sciences and biomedical engineering, to me was a little bit of struggle initially because I was trained as an engineer rather than biomedical researcher. So understanding how to look at biomedical problems was very challenging initially. I didn't know all the terms about medical diagnosis and diseases and cells and whatnot. So that was one. But then more importantly, I think we engineers tend to overlook the importance of translation. So oftentimes you develop something, you put things together in a lab, but then that just stays there. That never, goes out the door and actually used in the clinic. So for me, working at the Mass General Hospital and the Harvard Medical School, that really helped me understand the importance of translation and how to make it happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's one of the things I admire about people like you that have didn't start off as thinking I'm going to be doing work with patients. I'm going to be trying to improve the health of people. That my engineering is somehow going to translate to perhaps helping to prevent or diagnose cancer earlier. So really fascinating. But talk to me a little bit about where you are, because I think your focus right now is largely in the area of cancer, again, early prevention or diagnosis. And I know that also you are working really hard to pair that ability to do that with communities that are more in need, maybe rural settings, communities that don't have the resources that sort of emerging other areas that are more emerging are. So talk to me about how you came to do that.
Right. That's excellent question. So I mean, a little bit, going back, to the time when I was working at the Mass General Hospital, I was, I witnessed a lot of amazing technologies being developed at Mass General Hospital. But then the challenge was that many of these fascinating novel imaging technologies, they tend to be very expensive. So I kind of saw that as a major issue in terms of actually making these devices and technologies utilizable in clinics. So I came to grow a passion as to developing devices that are affordable in low resource settings, or even in the US, something that is affordable in primary care clinic or any general clinical settings. So that was my motivation. And then I built this research program where we mainly focus on low cost optical imaging technologies that can take a look at cellular details or cellular changes that might be caused by cancer or pre-cancer or other diseases so that we can detect the disease at early stage, and we can intervene at early stage so that it doesn't really progress to cancer at all. So that's my motivation, and that's what I really care about.
So timing wise, you started looking at this smartphone. So I do basically my whole life is on this phone, as probably everybody's is. Right. But I had never imagined that it could be used, even though my whole life is on it and I do virtually everything on it, as a microscope. So, I mean, the emergence of this technology, and again, this sort of ever innovative cycle of the smartphone, how are you using that in your work today?
Right. Well, as you said just now, I mean, I love my smartphone, right? And it takes the beautiful pictures of everything. So that was another motivation that I wanted to get into more of the mobile, microscopic technologies. So currently we are using smartphone sensor, the camera over here, to capture images that were generated through microscopy optics. So it's not just a smartphone alone that makes you take a look at cellular structures from human skin, but there's got to be big attachment in front of it. But once that microscopy image is generated from the microscope optics, then the data can be acquired by your fancy smartphone. So I think that's what's really nice. And also another nice thing about smartphone is that it has display, very nice display. It has cellular connectivity. It also has a pretty strong processing power. It has AI engines these days. So all these things are really useful in terms of analyzing the data and make somewhat what's the right word? Actionable information for the clinicians.
That's incredibly cool. The things that can be done with these machines, which they are, we think of them our phones, but they are machine learning in every way. So what was that aha moment where you were, you're thinking about lower cost ways to do imaging and to, meet your research objectives? And what was that aha moment where you're like, my phone?
Right. Well, so I love that question because I mean, I got that question quite often.
I'm sure there wasn't just
one
moment.
Right. Right.
But
so what happened was this. I mean, there was this paper published by my postdoc mentor, and it was really kind of interesting idea, and I built on that idea a little bit more so that we can do microscopic imaging without using fancy optoelectrical components. So we published the paper when I was a graduate student, and I forgot about it totally, right? And one time, about I would say 6-7 years ago, I was taking shower, and it really hit me hard that I can take that approach and make in the smartphone based confocal microscope. And that was my aha moment. I didn't write down the date or year, but that was about 6-7 years ago, taking shower. So when I talk about the story, then people say well, yeah, we should take shower more often, maybe more than once a day.
It's so funny you say that, because I swear that's when I do my best thinking as well.
Right. For
Like
sure.
my staff is always afraid when I come in and say, I had a really good idea last night. And they're like, oh gosh, she took a shower.
Right.
It's really interesting, but that's a great story. I mean, and the beautiful thing about that, I think, is how that illustrates, again, this thinking of things that you read and you learned as you were coming up through the academic ranks, it just led to thinking about new things and answered new questions and perhaps shut some doors and opened others. And I love that process. And now you're taking advantage of technology that is today and relevant and again allows access to so many more things. So where are you in terms of actual that use inspired ability with this to sort of move the needle with cancer diagnosis or prevention. I mean, where are you in terms of translating that into actual patient application?
Right. So I closely work with Dr. Clara Curiel here at the University of Arizona, and I mean, she's just amazing, phenomenal, collaborator. And we had a chance to image some skin cancer patients at her clinic, and we had a chance to compare images from our low-cost device versus images taken with $100,000 microscope device. And we published a nice paper comparing findings, basically saying that we're seeing all the key features that are needed for diagnosing cancer. So that was big milestone for us. But another milestone is that we have submitted IP disclosures, and they became patent applications. And some of them have been licensed by a startup company, and the company is, really trying hard to make this technology as a commercial product so that it can be widely, usable in clinics around the world. So.
Well, I have to share that perhaps some of those tissue samples were mine, because Dr. Curiel has been my doctor, my skin cancer doctor for probably 20 years.
Wow.
And unfortunately, that has plagued me my whole life. And so I personally am very, and I actually do have the smartphone picture taken every time I go in. And I personally, all joking aside, it's tough. It's tough to get carved on, every time you need to biopsy something. And, again, up until fairly recently, I've had to have that happen anytime I needed a biopsy or, so it becomes, it's tough. It's tough for patients. And that's just, basal cell carcinoma, much less anything else. So I'm really excited, about the future of that.
Right. And other thing that I want to mention is that, a person like Dr. Curiel, I mean, she's the world's expert on basal cell carcinoma and other skin cancers, right? So when she makes a call as to whether the lesion needs to be biopsied or not, she's really accurate, right? So she's not really wasting unnecessarily biopsying too many lesions at all, right? But for other less experienced dermatologists, the chances are that they take biopsy, but it turns out that it didn't have to be biopsied, so, and that happens quite often. So that's pretty frustrating for the patient and for the healthcare system. So that's one of the problems that we're trying to address.
Yeah, well, again, from a personal standpoint, thank you for those efforts. And I mean, really cool also that you are able to have these collaborations probably with people in fields that you might not necessarily have seen yourself working with. Has the U of A enabled that? And I mean, it's all what we're all about at Bio5, obviously, but I mean, have you found that to be a hallmark at the U of A?
Right. I think, I was very fortunate to be able to find Dr. Clara Curiel as my collaborator. So that general sort of, vibe, or the general sort of, intention that we have here to collaborate with, researchers, from different backgrounds and disciplines, I think that's very strong here. So, and we have this let's go kind of mindset. So once you have a device, then you just make it happen, right? And another sort of shout out that I want to do is our IRB, U of A IRB, has been fantastic. I mean, I think it's the best IRB in the world. So
awesome. Good. Yeah. Well, it takes, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand also. I mean, you can have the smartest engineers, scientists, researchers there are, but if you don't have the support systems, the infrastructure, the buildings, the equipment, the core facilities to help you do your job. And again, I think U of A is so strong in that support infrastructure and doesn't always tell that story well enough of how that enables you to do your job.
Right. And I mean, for me, personally, I mean, another sort of, positive thing, about U of A is that we have so many successful, very, well recognized biomedical optics researchers at the university, like, such as Dr. Barton and Dr. Ron Liang. So we have really nice group of people working on biomedical optics, not necessarily exactly the same thing, but we have this group of community that addresses a similar issue as a community rather than individuals. So I think that's another strong aspect about Bio5 and U of A in general.
I agree. It's very exciting to hear about all of your work and again the impact that it will make. I also know that, okay, so we talked about cancer, but I also know that after hearing about some of the technology that you're working with and thinking about, I believe somebody from the United Kingdom reached out, a researcher at Manchester, I think, University, and thought, hey, maybe this can be a collaboration for the work I'm doing, which is on corneal ulcers, correct?
Right.
So what's going on with that?
Right. So I think it was like 2019, I got a random email from this ophthalmologist at the University of Manchester in the UK. And she was asking me, whether we could collaborate. So my collaborator, Jaya Chidambaram, she did fantastic clinical work in India, where she brought this very expensive confocal microscope and took a look at the eye of patients with corneal ulcers. So and she demonstrated that with this non-invasive imaging technology, we could diagnose different types of corneal ulcers correctly. So we joined forces together, and we sort of put together grant applications, and we finally got funded as of January this year from the NIH. So now we're putting together portable in vivo confocal ophthalmoscope, which I call it Pico. So it sounds very small and nice. So we're generating this Pico device with the goal of addressing corneal ulcer diagnosis and treatment issues in low resource settings. Because corneal ulcers happen quite often in places like India, where people go out in the field and doing agriculture job, and they scratch their cornea, and that's when either fungi, bacteria, parasites can grow on them, and there's not necessarily a good way of diagnosing it in timely manner. So
interesting. Well, I think that's amazing that you're again, you not only are just taking the work at face value, but you're looking at where the need is greatest and really trying to make sure that those areas are addressed as well. It's
I was very fortunate that I got approached by all these amazing collaborators. So I obviously I'm not a clinician, so I don't really understand the problem, but I again, like, I was very lucky to work with world's best experts in the field, and so they bring their clinical expertise and interest, and I bring technology solutions. So it's just the best marriage ever. So
no, I mean, as you said, you may not, if you're not a clinician, so you may not understand the problem, but what you bring is the prospective solution. So that is a perfect marriage, correct? So yeah. Well, that's really exciting. I know you're also teaching, and both are full-time jobs in and of themselves.
Yeah, right.
So I know you have a passion for mentorship and teaching, and I know you're doing that as well, right?
Right, sure. What I that's another aspect that I didn't know that I would like so much, but before I joined the U of A, but it's been really wonderful working with young minds, young engineers. So I love teaching. I've been teaching biomedical engineering courses. One was for juniors. Now I'm teaching the graduate in a senior course, and it's really wonderful. So I like that. I also, I don't know if you have noticed it, but I tend to be very chatty. I like talking a lot. So I started doing this in a thing called the DKs in the coffee hour. So every Friday at 8 a.m. I schedule one-on-one just a chat with one of my students. Obviously I buy the coffee, and we talk about just random things. I mean, sometimes we talk about favorite Netflix and TV shows and animes that we've been watching and so on. But oftentimes we talk about careers. I mean, I obviously don't know everything, but I can keep some idea about all advices as to what they're trying to do. So I kind of started doing it with students who are working in my lab. But then I kind of ran out of students, so I kind of opened it up for any students that take my courses. And then I just opened it up to anyone who's interested at the U of A. So whoever's interested, if you're interested in having free coffee, just
DK's coffee hour. I love that. I really do. And again, all joking aside, those students are lucky to have you. I mean, I wish I had professors when I was in college that thought that way. Not just this isn't just about checking assignments off. This is about really making a connection with these students that allows them to think and understand that you're a person too, and just that everybody has different paths, and I think that's super cool. So that's keep doing that. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I say this to all my students, I mean, which is that coffee hour is more of entertainment for me than for them. So I thank them for their time, because I mean, I love hearing about their story and what they're interested in, rather than my boring life, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, again, you're creating a relationship with them, which I think is very, very cool. So what Netflix shows should we be watching? That's what I'd like to know. What's at the top of the list?
Right. I mean, I'm watching too many Korean TV shows, so I don't know if you're gonna be interested in. Other thing that I really like is watching shows like Love is Blind, kind of dating.
The reality TV.
Yeah, the reality show, which is totally fiasco, but I love watching it with my wife, and we keep commenting on different perspectives, so that's always entertaining.
Yeah, it's amazing how addicting those things are. It's like you sit there and you're like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, but you can't stop watching. You can't stop watching it.
You cannot stop watching.
Yeah. Well, that's fun. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us and share more about your work. I'm really excited for what comes next, and I know you will always we were going to invite you back because we want to hear about it, and I just really appreciate the energy and the talents you bring. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for the kind words, and thanks for this opportunity. I again, very chatty, so I can go on for another 30 minutes.
Okay. We'll do an update soon for sure. That will be fun. I look forward to catching up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, DK. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Science Talks. Continue the conversation with us next time as we learn more about the amazing science happening at the University of Arizona's Bio 5 Institute.